They have a ship, a vessel, that flies through the air as a ship sails upon the seas. However, that ship now has a large hole in it, and I may have just realized something incredibly important. Have I recorded Hyperforce 10? I don't think I've recorded Hyperforce 10, because I don't remember talking about Alpha blasting a hole in the side of a ship. I remember writing it, but I don't remember talking about it. Oh, God. I never recorded 10. Holy crap. Okay, I need to record 10. So, I actually do have 3 videos to record tonight. Hello there, heroes. I'm the Orange Ranger, and welcome to another Power Rangers Hyperforce session review. My quest to catch up continues, and this session we had a rather unique happening. We've seen the Hyperforce Rangers work together as a team of 5, and we've seen them meet up with past Rangers portrayed by the actors who actually played them. However, we had never seen the Hyperforce Rangers work with an actor that was not representing a former Ranger from the show. Not until this session. I figure since this is a guest star that's probably not familiar to a lot of you, I'll go ahead and get the introductions out of the way, though I am going to save who she's portraying for later on since that's involved in the plot. The guest star on this session of Hyperforce was Ali Gonino, an American TV actress and musician who's also involved in the RPG world as part of the official Dungeons & Dragons Twitch-streamed game, Girls Guts Glory. So if you think about it, in a way, this session was kind of a crossover between Dungeons & Dragons and Hyperforce. Not in any official capacity, though. Therefore, good friends, let us strap on our armor, climb on board our trusty steed, and take a look at the 11th session of Hyperforce, Rangers of the Round Table. As we begin, the knights that encountered the Rangers at the end of the last session take them into custody, and they're taken to a large ornate palace with a large moat around it. At the end of the large arched hallway that they enter sits a throne, and in front of that throne is a large wooden round table. Yes, between that and the title, I'm sure you've by now put it together, the Power Rangers have landed in Camelot. And standing in front of all this is Lady Guinevere, played by Gonino. The knights that took the Rangers into custody were Sirs Edward, Galahad, and Lancelot. Lancelot tells the lady that they found these strange people in the forest, saying that they were fighting strange, invisible creatures. And along with them was a tinier knight in a strange-looking kind of armor who vanished into thin air along with their ship. Vesper, of course, takes a seat upon the throne almost immediately, somewhat befitting the hashtag Queen Vesper that has become popular in the Hyperforce circle. However, Gwen very quickly chases her out of the chair. And by the way, you'll notice that I'm just going to call her Gwen for short. That's a little bit easier for me to say. Jack explains the situation to Guinevere the best that he possibly can, considering anachronisms and everything. They have a ship that sails upon the skies as a normal ship does upon the seas. However, that ship now has a large hole in its side and has been rendered useless. Lancelot can confirm to Gwen that at the very least they do have a ship. He did see it before it vanished. She wonders why they would bring these strange people right to the heart of Camelot, where they might possibly attack, though the Rangers insist that they come in peace. They are also worried about finding Marv, though pragmatically, Chloe asks if the kingdom has a blacksmith or a forge, something that could possibly help them fix their ship. Guinevere says she does believe that they come in peace, and she will offer the aid of Camelot. Down that large arched hallway, Merlin, the wise wizard, makes his appearance, and the knights point out that with him is the tiny knight in the strange armor. That's the one that we saw. Yes, heroes, Alpha is with Merlin. Merlin actually cuts right to the chase with Gwen. He kind of pulls a Vesper, come to think of it. These people are time travelers from the future. However, she has nothing to fear from them. As a matter of fact, there's an energy about them that feels strangely familiar. The Rangers fill in some more of the gaps about, well, the gap in their ship, as well as Marv being missing. Jack makes a formal request for the assistance of the Crown. And while Gwen at first feigns offense that they would need Arthur's help when she should more than suffice, Merlin urges her to tell the Rangers about what's happened to Arthur. She tells them that Arthur and Lancelot rode off together to fight a large red dragon that was terrorizing nearby villages, but Arthur has not been seen since then. She realizes that actually, perhaps they can help each other. If the Rangers can find out what happened to Arthur, possibly locate him, she will help with their ship. Since Lancelot was there, the Rangers talk to him, and he gives them some of the initial details. Gwen asks the Rangers if they would like some food and drink, and Vesper, being Vesper, asks for a pig roasted on a spit. Merlin actually decides to roll with it. Why not have a grand feast to celebrate these new visitors? They can rest up, maybe bathe. Gwen points out they're a little on the stinky side. Get something to eat and drink, and then tomorrow they can start their grand adventure. Eddie takes note of Sir Edward, not just in their similar first names, but in the fact that his full name is Sir Edward Banks. Eddie's name is Eddie Banks. Realizing that an ancestor of his is there kind of changes things for Eddie, and points out to the entire team that they have to remember to be really careful about history here, especially in the case of Sir Edward. If anything happens to Sir Edward, Eddie could possibly disappear from time. Jack wonders that since this dragon everybody's talking about is a red dragon, maybe this has something to do with Marv. Vesper points out that maybe the dragon is Marv. And Jack replies to her in a very snippy fashion. You'll notice if you watch that Jack spends this entire session kind of with a little bit of an attitude problem, which is likely just due to Marv being missing. Malika goes ahead and nips this theory in the bud, by the way, pointing out that the Rangers saw Marv taken through an invisiportal to the Alliance ship, and the Alliance doesn't seem to be anywhere around. As a matter of fact, she kind of spoiled a detail that I thought would have been important to hold through to the end of the session. Marv is not here, though that may be due to the fact that Peter Sudarso was actually also not there. He had a scheduling conflict and couldn't make the session. The Rangers go bathe and rest up a little bit and then head down for the feast, though it's pretty clear that nobody's really feeling it. The Rangers are worried about Marv, and Camelot is worried about Arthur. Vesper, however, decides that she hasn't been weird enough just yet, and decides to pretend to be a man, telling Chloe to call her Vespero. Gwen overhears this and asks what the heck the two of them are doing, but they just turn to her and start quizzing her about her fashion sense, especially her long, beautiful blonde hair. Are those extensions? Gwen doesn't even actually know what extensions are, and then Vesper smells her hair, because apparently to be a female Hyperforce Ranger, you've just got to have a nose for hair. It's your classic medieval times kind of feast: roasted boar, vegetables, cheese, bread, etc., etc. Not very appealing for Chloe, huh? Not a single burrito in sight. However, Eddie explains to her that she could just make one from the material she has. As a matter of fact, she could invent the burrito. This obviously excites Chloe greatly, and she starts rapping about how to make a burrito. It's just, I don't even know sometimes, to be honest. Meanwhile, Merlin and Alpha sit nearby, and Alpha starts chastising the Rangers about doing things that could interfere with the natural flow of history. Eddie walks over and starts catching up with Alpha, getting the information that he has gathered. Merlin knows what the morphing grid is. However, whatever they use it for in this realm, they don't refer to them as Power Rangers. Eddie theorizes that maybe it's the Knights of the Round Table, somehow harnessing the energy of the morphing grid to create an early predecessor to the Power Rangers. Jack says that he'd like to talk with Merlin, but Chloe tells him to be kind of careful because, he's been kind of testy today, like I mentioned earlier. He walks up to Merlin and very humbly requests an audience, which Merlin graciously accepts. Meanwhile, as music begins to play, Eddie walks up to Vesper and asks if she would like to dance. She reminds him to call her Vespero and to treat her like a man, but she accepts the dance anyway. What, dudes can dance with dudes, it's a free kingdom. Jack and Merlin talk, but as Jack starts to hint about things that have happened on their journey, Merlin warns him that even he is aware of the fact that he should not be made aware of future events. So Jack describes it as generally as he can, basically saying that the Rangers are somewhat like sheriffs fighting for the greater good. He then asks Merlin about the dragon. Merlin says that the dragon was a terror, but suddenly disappeared at the same time that Arthur disappeared. Jack remembers that Lancelot was on that mission and asked what he said at the time, but Merlin says that according to the witnesses, Lancelot also disappeared just as the dragon arrived. Apparently the dragon's ears were burning, and not just because it accidentally breathed on them or something, as it shows up at the castle to attack. Gwen pulls out her bow and rolls a bolt 6, hitting the dragon right in the eye. Vesper pulls out her blade blaster, but the dragon falls out of view. The Rangers notice that the Queen has a shining white gem on her bow, and that all of her clothing and weaponry also seems to be white. They run outside to see if the dragon is still there, but it's run off. Merlin says now that they know the dragon is still around, they do need to make a plan to deal with it, but for tonight, they're probably safe. Eddie asks if Merlin knows where the dragon lives. Merlin's not sure, but he says there are some caves right near the villages where the dragon's been attacking. In something that caused a lot of debate, and to be honest, a good bit of consternation in this session, there are two main paths to go to get to the village. One of them runs along the coast, which is probably a safer path, but exposed and open to the air. The other path goes through a dark forest. It's covered, of course, but Lord knows what lurks inside. Vesper actually speaks incredibly heroically here, saying that if there's any chance of dark, evil creatures inside that forest, they should go that way and take care of them along the way. Gwen asks Merlin if there are any dangers along the coast path. He says that he has heard some tales of sirens and their tempting songs. That's tempting songs. Merlin observes that the Rangers are very much like the Knights of the Round Table, especially not having their leader Marv there with them right now. All of them are equal, and they seem to want to decide on things as a whole instead of one of them becoming a leader and dictatorially making the decision. So he says that they can take this night to think things over and they can decide on what course to travel in the morning. However, that's not something they're interested in doing. They would like to decide this now before they go to bed. As a matter of fact, Vesper just starts drawing out a battle plan on a piece of notebook paper that she happened to have with her for some reason. And that plan actually turned out being a stick figure Gwen shooting the dragon. Since they seem kind of torn on which way to go, Eddie asks Gwen how they can possibly decide, or even if she will just decide for them. She decides to leave it to fate on a roll of the die. Yes, in this role-playing game where actions are decided by dice, Gwen, inside the game, decides their action by rolling dice. It was just so deliciously meta. Odd for the coast, even for the forest, and she rolls even, so the dark forest it is. Though I have to warn them, they've got to be careful. Right after you get through the dark forest, you end up in the Shrine of the Silver Monkey, and that thing's really complicated. Killed a lot of temple runs. You got to be careful about that. Some of the Rangers decide to help with the dishes from the feast, which actually earned them a couple of points of energy from Malika, and Eddie finds himself near Sir Edward. Edward realizes that Eddie is some kind of devoted, honorable warrior, and says he's a little bit new to the night game and would appreciate any advice Eddie has. Eddie says, you just have to trust your heart and be good to your friends and fellow warriors. Eddie then asks Edward if he has a wife, any kids, basically trying to ensure his own lineage, but Edward says no romance in his life right now. Well, Edward does say that there's a girl that he fancies and asks Eddie for any advice on that. Eddie says, if you care about someone, you have to just tell them. Be real with them about it. Because it's one of the most important things in your entire life. Jack then throws a piece of coal at Eddie and indicates to him through vision things that Eddie has been staring at Vesper the entire time he said that. Here we get some minor character stuff and a few plot threads that were never really followed up on that didn't really factor into the main plot of the story. You folks will notice that I am trying my best to speed these videos up whenever I can. 45, 47-minute video is just a little bit too long for me, so I try to skip ahead whenever it's not too crucial to the main plot of the session. The only real interaction here that I do want to comment on is that Vesper finds Eddie and thanks him for the dance earlier. Eddie says, "You're welcome, Vespero. What am I supposed to call you again?" She says that Eddie can call her whatever he wants. So Eddie says that he'll call her amazing. Smooth Eddie Banks. Jack, however, isn't quite ready for bed yet, so he decides to find Lancelot to interview him more about the dragon. He finds him at the round table, and the two of them talk. Lancelot says that Arthur rode ahead in order to fight the dragon, but then he vanished, and that's when the dragon appeared and started burning the village. Although, actually, technically, Lancelot never actually saw the dragon, just the damage that it was causing. As Jack goes to head for bed, Lancelot gives him a friendly warning. Several knights of the round have fallen in battle protecting Camelot, so Jack would do best to watch himself. As Jack leaves to go to bed, he happens to notice a familiar gleam on Lancelot's armor. And that gleam is orange. Yes, Lancelot has an orange gem. You can trust that I'll be commenting on this later. Malika decided to throw a rather interesting wrinkle at the Rangers that I kind of liked, since they were on not only unfamiliar beds, but medieval ones stuffed with feathers and hay and everything. Sleep was going to be a 3 difficulty. Now, they kind of moved through this section very quickly, so I didn't catch everything that happened. I want to say that the Rangers that slept well were awarded 1 or 2 points of energy. All I'm really sure of is that not all of the Rangers passed the roll, so not everybody slept well. Galahad rouses the Rangers from their bedchambers, and they all go to the outside of the castle, already seeing Gwen atop a white dappled horse named Worthy. She instructs the Rangers to pick out horses for themselves. Vesper sees a solid black horse, walks up to it, and neighs at it. The horse neighs right back at her, and then starts chewing on her hair. Vesper declares that that is her horse, and she names that horse Dark Imperium Master. Some people might have gone with Black Beauty, but alright. Alpha warns the Rangers not to change history, which is something that Eddie heartily agrees with, seeing as his very existence could possibly be on the line. He then tells Alpha to stay and oversee repairs on the ship, but Alpha is worried about their primitive technology as well as their primitive metals. Eddie says to just give them some of the storage tanks from their ship, which should help to make an appropriate patch. Gwen overhears the Rangers talking about history and the timeline and etc., and approaches them with a question. If they are indeed from the future, do they know when Arthur died? Was this the time? They're not sure how to answer the question at first, and at first say that they don't know, but then Jack decides that they should just come clean. They don't actually know when King Arthur died, because at some point, all of Camelot just faded from history and faded into myth. By even standard modern times on Earth, most people believed everything about Camelot was a legend. This is something that she accepts with grace. Eddie's concerns take just a bit of an upward leap when Sir Edward comes running out of the castle wanting to join the quest. Eddie is obviously dead set against this for fairly obvious reasons, but the other Rangers overrule him. Just like being a Power Ranger, if Edward wants to fight for the greater good, he should be allowed to do so. Eddie notices that Edward is wearing an aqua-colored gem, and they finally have the opportunity to ask someone about them. Edward says that the gems were gifts from Merlin, and they are not just simple decor. The gems somehow summon a suit of magical armor. So the group leaves and they head into the dark forest. Eddie starts whimpering, and Gwen says that if he's going to cry, maybe he should have just stayed behind. Oh, snap. Chloe says that the Rangers should, activate their torches, and they turn on flashlights on their morphers. But the further they get into the forest, it just gets darker and quieter and eerier. They wonder if they should turn back, but the Rangers are divided, incredibly divided, on whether or not they should do so. The girls want to turn back, Jack wants to keep going, and Eddie, still being stung by Gwen's words, but also still freaked out by this place, refuses to provide an answer. Gwen worries about splitting the party. Good at rolling dice. Did Guinevere actually roleplay games? Interesting. She doesn't want them all getting attacked while they're split up. Everybody on Team Camelot wants to go back, so the Rangers decide to acquiesce and they all turn back towards the light. At this point, Guinevere pulls out a little tiny dragon friend, Richard, and puts the dragon on her shoulder. Chloe, desperately wanting to emulate Guinevere, takes out her Tamadinky and puts it on her shoulder. This is actually the first time the other Rangers have seen her Tamadinky, and they say that it's cute. Richard suddenly takes off and starts flying around in a circle, squawking as if in warning. Guinevere asks Richard which way they should go, but Richard is then grabbed by a werewolf. Chloe tries to morph, but she has stepped out of line. Lady Guinevere will be the one going first. Her gem begins to glow, she smacks it, and she's encased in a circle of white light. When she emerges from the light, she is encased in the armor of the White Battle Knight, using the power of lightning. That's right, heroes. As was theorized earlier, these gems turn the Camelot folks into a very early version of the Power Rangers called the Battle Knights. And yes, my friends, that means that Lancelot, who had an orange gem, was the Orange Battle Knight. And guess what? Spoilers! Lancelot never leaves the castle the entire time and does not transform. I mean, come on! I do understand that it would be imaginary anyway, I wouldn't actually get to see it, but Lancelot was an Orange Ranger, like me. I guess in the end, I just have to be satisfied that he existed, so to speak. Sir Edward sees her do this and smacks his gem as well, transforming into the Aqua Battle Knight with the power of water. So, a blue-colored ranger with the power of water. Isn't that interesting? Gwen fires a mystical white lightning arrow at the werewolf, hitting it right in the neck and making it drop Richard the dragon. Richard's alright, and Gwen puts him away. The werewolf recovers, pulling the arrow out and charging at Jack for some reason, but he far overjumps him. Seeing an opportunity, Jack leaps into the air, grabs the werewolf, and more or less body slams it. The werewolf curls into a ball and then transforms into a regular person. Jack says now that they have to be very careful when they're battling these creatures because it turns out that they're just regular people. The villager is injured, bleeding from a wound in his neck. Imagine that. Gwen gives up a scarf and ties it around his neck, and then Chloe gives up her horse to give to the villager so he can ride to Camelot and receive further care. Having already faced some of the danger that the Dark Forest offers, they decide to just forge ahead instead of turning around. They eventually clear through the forest and end up in kind of a high, narrow, cliffy sort of an area. Chloe had joined Vesper on Dark Imperium Master, and no, I'm not going to forget that that's what she named her horse, even if she actually kind of did. I mean, I did have the benefit of taking notes. Rangers start to wonder what Marv would be saying or doing if he was here with them, and they get a nice little chuckle out of remembering some funny things about him as they resolve to find him after all of this is taken care of. Edward asks them if this person they're talking about was their leader. They say that he was. Edward says, "Were it a dragon that got him?" No, it wasn't a dragon. It was actually a chipmunk. I mean, kind of, like a weremunk. Gwen, amazed by all this, says she's got to get out of the castle more often. They refocus on their mission, but then a big swarm of blackbirds shows up and starts kind of squawking all around them. One of them poops on Lady Gwen. I guess even Hyperforce has a little bit of toilet humor. But then they start attacking Sir Edward. And wait a second, do these birds actually have human faces? Yes, my friends, these are not blackbirds, they are actually harpies. Everybody shields themselves, but Edward falls off of his horse and tumbles, just grabbing on to the edge of a cliff. Chloe morphs. Hyperforce! And uses her Hurricane Whirlwind attack to clear the harpies out of the area. She tries to make it gentle so it won't impact Sir Edward, but Chloe doesn't really know how to do things gently, so the whirlwind picks up Edward and throws him into the sea. Gwen quickly ties a string to one of her arrows and fires it into the water towards Edward. Did she get him? Did she catch him? Did she accidentally hit him in the head? Find out after this break. Gwen uses a super, and it's actually a really good thing she did, seeing as she just barely cleared the roll with that super. She hits Edward's cloak and starts lifting him out of the water, telling him to climb up the rope. However, something happens, something distracts Edward, and he actually pulls the arrow out of his cloak and willingly drops into the water, disappearing. A terrified Eddie starts looking at his hands, Back to the Future style. However, he is not fading, so Edward must still be alive. Chloe kind of pulls a Marv and just jumps off the cliff, grabbing Gwen's rope to lower herself down. She calls back up to everyone and says that Edward is okay, for the moment. He is in a cave surrounded by 3 very beautiful singing maidens. Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs. As a matter of fact, then Chloe starts to feel herself impacted and stops responding to them. Vesper realizes that Chloe is still hanging onto the rope, and the rope is still attached to a horse, so she smacks that horse in the butt so it runs up, and Chloe gets yanked back up to them. Eddie has a plan to save his ancestor, but he's going to need Vesper's help. You see, her loud songs, not to mention her incredible beauty, of course, will keep him from falling victim to the Sirens. The two of them jump off the cliff and morph. After striking a superhero landing, Vesper starts singing while Eddie goes to grab Edward. However, he does start to feel the pull of the Sirens, but then looks over at Vesper and it's kind of a tug of war. Realizing this, Vesper sweeps Eddie, so now I guess she's officially swept him off his feet, and grabs Edward herself, but Edward refuses to leave. Eddie and Vesper start to discuss the possibility that maybe Eddie is part Siren, and maybe this is just destiny. Maybe they should just go. However, as the others ride down to join them, we see that this is not actually the case, as the Sirens reveal their sets of sharp teeth, as well as their intentions. Gwen suggests that maybe Vesper was on the right track. Maybe a greater song is what's necessary to break them free from this. The Rangers ask Gwen to lead them in a song of her day. She teaches them The Unicorn of Downton, Essex. Seriously, watch this. The Sirens hear this song and react in great pain before transforming into harpies. Alrighty then. 3 of the harpies just fly away, while the other 2 turn into mermaids and swim away in the sea. So 2 of these were sirens that turned into harpies that turned into mermaids. They decide to get back to their journey and finally arrive at some caves near some villages where some fields have been burninated. Edward wonders if they should set up camp for the night, but Jack and Gwen think that they have just about enough time before sunset to go looking for the dragon. They head into the nearby village, finding it empty and burninated. They get off of their horses and send them all back to Camelot. Wow, pretty well-trained horses to make that long of a journey by themselves, and start exploring around. They do find a nearby cave and head inside. They're a little bit nervous, but Edward says this isn't really going to be a problem. This dragon actually only attacks at night.
When night falls,
the dragon stomps out and starts looking for them, being able to smell them but not actually able to see them. Jack contemplates morphing, but decides that that would create a very bright flash of yellow light that would very likely give away his position, so he thinks better of it. Chloe, who is already morphed, pulls her bow and stands at the ready. The dragon sniffs around for them but just can't seem to find them, so he kind of gives up on the idea, heading outside the cave towards the village to burninate some more fields. He does call out first to anybody who might remain in the area, seeking a worthy challenge. Vesper gets onto Dark Imperium Master. I kind of thought they had sent all the horses back to Camelot, but okay, anyway, and decides that if this dragon can speak, maybe it can be made to see reason. She rides up boldly and says that she is a knight of the Hyperforce. The dragon is incredibly unimpressed. It defeated King Arthur. This dragon eats knights for breakfast. It toys around with them to pass the time. Eddie has had just about enough of being called out by everybody around, so he baits the dragon into shooting fire at him. He does turn to Vesper and say that if this doesn't work, he really likes her. As the dragon shoots its flame, Eddie fires water from his Oceanus trident, using 2 supers to really douse out those flames. He is successful. However, some of the fire got around the water and hits him for 14 damage. Vesper rides towards the dragon with her axe. The dragon does cough at her, but can no longer breathe fire, just spitting out some water, which does kind of throw her off course, so nothing happens. The others start to run out of the cave to join the fight, but then see near the mouth of the cave that there's a very recently used campfire, along with some footprints that are less than a day old. They call out for Arthur, but they don't hear any response. Gwen starts to follow Vesper's logic from earlier. If this dragon is not Arthur, and it's red, maybe it is Marv. Even though we, the audience, especially remembered that Malika said much earlier that Marv is not in this time. So, yes, Marv does not respond either. Edward catches up with Eddie and Vesper and attacks the dragon. However, it spits the last of the water out and manages to get a fireball out, hitting Edward and knocking him flat. Eddie, freaked out about this of course, pulls the blades off of his trident and uses them to plug the dragon's nose holes. Gwen tries to take out the dragon's other eye, but she misses. Jack finally gets to morph, being the last of the Rangers to do so. Heck, as a matter of fact, even Gwen and Edward are morphed.
Hyperforce! Yellow! Ready! Power up!
He throws his Creus hammer at the dragon, but misses. Badly. Like far, far away up in the mountains, badly. Chloe drops into the shadows and then uses her Eye of the Phoenix attack to take out the Eye of the Dragon. Eddie is worried about taking more fire damage, but knows for the sake of his team that he's got to get those flames put out. He has Chloe distract the dragon and then fires more water at it, and this time the dragon takes in an even bigger dose. Eddie checks on his ancestor, who is thankfully alright, and as he does, their blue and aqua energy begins to swirl together, which suggests a teamwork attack. They both slice at the dragon's belly, which knocks it over. Gwen fires another arrow at the dragon, and once again misses. However, it tries to breathe a fireball at them, and with the dagger stuck in its nose, it accidentally inhales the fireball instead of sending it out, and the dragon explodes. In what I thought was really excellent attention to detail, the Rangers celebrate the fact that the dragon is defeated, but then very quickly realize that everything is on fire. Eddie fires water at it, Edward helping with his own abilities, but it's not enough. Edward sees that there's a well nearby and proposes a bucket chain. Jack, however, has a better idea, launching himself into it with a giant cannonball and splashing out basically all the water in the well, which puts out all the flames. With the fire out, they see the dragon curl up and transform into King Arthur. Yes, it turns out that Arthur was the dragon the whole time, and that kind of makes sense when you consider that Arthur's full name is Arthur Pendragon. As Gwen sends Richard to go find the hammer, the Rangers realize that they've messed Arthur up pretty badly. Eddie wonders what they can do, and Malika reminds Andre that he has the healing charge card. You'll notice there that I said Andre and not Eddie, and that's actually something I'd like to take a second to talk about. So this is going to reflect basically for all of time and history just how far behind these videos were, but I was recently writing the script for the review of the 12th session, and to be perfectly honest, the 13th has aired since then as well, and I was getting a little bit confused about the healing charge ability because it was used in a later session. You'll hear me explain why when that comes up. So I posted a question in the brand new Facebook Hyperforce fan club, which you should join if you're on Facebook, seeking some clarification because I couldn't understand the fact that they were treating it as if it were Eddie's ability when it was first described as something the entire team could make use of. The only limitation was using it twice per session. One of the great, awesome folks at HyperRPG actually replied directly, so if you look in the fan club, you should be able to find this post and our conversation, and explained that the healing charge card is an ability that does not necessarily tie into the story. He compared it to a video game power-up or bonus, kind of like a cheat code that powers up a character without directly impacting the story. In this case, it's very much like Malika giving them energy when they do heroic things, or the supers, megas, and ultras that people donate to give the Rangers access to. They're things that affect the meta of the story without necessarily being written into the story itself. The healing charge card was not awarded to Eddie, it was awarded to Andre. It is his card and he is free at any time to give it to any other player. And since this card exists outside of the story, he can do that at any time, whether the Rangers are around or not. It is the players who have placed the limitation on themselves to not transfer that power around if they don't have the ability to. So that power rests with Eddie because Andre is the one who has the card and just hasn't thought to give it to anybody yet. Anyway, Eddie and Vesper combine their energy and use the healing charge ability on Arthur to heal his injuries. He explains to them all that he had ridden off to battle Morgan, not a dragon. However, his heart was so filled with rage for Morgan that she was able to transform him into the dragon. That rage is now gone, so he's not going to be transforming again. Arthur asks the Rangers how he can possibly thank them for their help, and they say that besides repairing their ship, maybe they could have Merlin look for Marv with his mystical abilities. That's all well and good and something that he'll be happy to do, but he was also looking for something a little more practical, and it turns out Arthur also seems to be fond of games as well. He has Gwen assign each of the Rangers a number, and then has her roll that die. The number that comes up is Chloe's. So Arthur hands Chloe a pink shining gem that he said belonged to one of their fallen knights, but now it belongs to her. He says it will allow her to summon armor very much similar to Edward's and Guinevere's, and Malika points out that Chloe can instinctively feel that this gem will interface with and enhance her ranger powers. That is right, my friends. For the very first time in Power Rangers history, the Pink Ranger has been given a battleizer. Alpha calls the Rangers and says their ship is ready and they really should come and take a look at it. They want to teleport directly there and bring along Arthur and Gwen, but the energies that those two are using won't really interface with the energies the others are using. By the way, even though it's not officially stated, I would assume that Arthur had the red gem and was therefore the red Battle Knight, but you know, like I said, it's never officially stated. Anyway, they decide to just go ahead and say their goodbyes there, and Arthur and Gwen point out they really should stay behind and help this village that's been burninated anyway. Eddie asks them to hold a grand gala feast to celebrate Edward's contributions to the mission. And seriously, invite all the women, every woman in the village, in the area, in the kingdom, invite all the women. They decide to allow Guinevere to keep the piece of notebook paper with the battle plan Vesper made on it. Alpha freaks out about this possibly changing history, even as he's teleporting the Rangers away in front of King Arthur and Lady Guinevere. They get to their ship and see that the hole that had been blasted in it has been patched with a large wrought iron door complete with the crest of the Round Table. As they board the ship, Chloe shows the others the pink gem and shows it to Alpha and wonders if this can help find Marv in any way. There's nothing that the gem can really do to help, but it does inspire Alpha with the idea that maybe they should consult something else that's pink. Jen Scott's the pink Time Force Ranger. They send her a message about Marv's capture and hope that she will reply quickly. This was actually a really fun session. We once again saw Malika take the absence of a Ranger actor and work that into the story, not just in a general sense that they're not there, but providing a very compelling and kind of different story, just like when Jack was gone and they did Santa Claus and Christmas and all that. And they also took the opportunity to work in an actor who is not a part of the Rangerverse, and everything just felt very fresh and new and creative. So for those of you who don't actually watch the sessions on Twitch or don't really follow them at all, after the story ends in each session, they have a little fireside chat where Malika and some of the Ranger actors that decide to stick around answer some questions and just talk about some things and have a good little time, kind of cooling down from the session of the day. I asked Malika during this fireside chat for this session how she felt about having taken the Rangers to a time that didn't have anything to do with Power Rangers history. And ladies and gentlemen, I got schooled on my Power Rangers knowledge. I consider myself something of a walking Ranger encyclopedia, so that impressed the crud out of me. And actually, I was a little bit embarrassed because, as it turns out, the connection is not only related to the season that Hyperforce is based on, but my favorite season of Power Rangers, Time Force. You folks might remember that Wes got his battleizer, the Red Battle Warrior, from a white knight. It was not Gwen, it was a male voice, not her voice, after defeating a dragon and using those powers to defeat a black knight. Malika decided to take the story to the medieval time that seemed to be referencing to explore the idea that the Knights of the Round Table may have had access to the morphing grid. That is nothing short of absolutely freaking genius. And once again, all I can do is applaud her knowledge and creativity. It was fun to see Eddie constantly worrying about his ancestor, the Rangers having to adjust to the ancient past, and having a fun adventure while at the same time keeping Marv in their thoughts. Gunino, being an experienced RPG player already, slotted in far better than the usual Power Rangers guest does, not a little bit of disruption at all, and she portrayed the grace and determination of Lady Guinevere excellently. From the time this series started, I wasn't sure that it could possibly get even better, but now even the guest episodes are getting perfect scores. Yeah, that's right, Rangers of the Round Table gets a 5 out of 5. That's going to do it for another Power Rangers Hyperforce session review. Thank you folks so much as always for watching. Make sure to like the video by clicking the like button right down below. In the comments below, let me know what you thought of this session, even though, yes, I realize it was a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago by now. Let me know what you thought of it and of my review of it. Make sure to subscribe to the channel to see all of my videos and set up those notifications. Ring that bell so you get notified of whenever I post brand new videos just like this Power Rangers Hyperforce session review. And if you're interested in tossing me a little bit of tip support for these videos and my channel, not a requirement, just a nice thing to do, head over to digitaltipjar.com/orangerangervid and I would graciously accept any support you can provide. Until next time, heroes, may the power protect you and go Hyperforce. We have seen the Rangers work together as a team of 5. I figured that since this is a guest that's not going to be familiar, ma'am, for being involved with the official Dungeons & Dragons, I knew I was gonna say the official Dungeons and Dragons streamed Twitch game. Can I say that better? The official Dungeons and Dragons Twitch streamed game, which is actually how I have it written. Realizing that one of his ancestors is there kind of changes thing a bit for Eddie. Changes thing. He's a little bit new to being a knight and would appreciate any advice Edward had. Eddie thanks Vesper for the dance earlier. I think it's Vesper thanking Eddie, isn't it? Farts. Gwen worries about splitting the party up. She's a good roleplay. That's ad-libbing for you. Doesn't want to split the party up. Good at rolling dice. I'm just saying, might have been a role player. Gwen worries about splitting up the party, and by the way, doesn't want to split the party. Good at rolling dice. May have been a very early role player. I'm just saying there. And then fart near the shore, as a matter of fact. They decide to get back to their journey and finally arrive at some caves near some villages where some fields have been burninated. They think about things and do stuff too. As the dragon shoots its flames towards Eddie, he fires his ocean. Jack finally gets to morph, being the last of the 4 rangers to do so. Actually, Gwen. I don't know who else is with them, but I know Gwen and... Jack finally gets to morph, being the last of the rangers to do so. Heck, Gwen and then does her Eye of the Phoenix attack to take out the Eye of the Dragon. Gwen, no. So this is going to reflect basically for all in time and yeah. Arthur had the red gem and was the red battle warrior or knight, but from the time this series started, I wasn't sure that it could.